Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Sally Adnams-Jones, and I'm giving a little response to the responses for the Aubrey Marcus and his talks on polyamory, the little shindig that we had recently in the consciousness movement. I think it has been extremely productive. And we've clarified a whole bunch of issues around the core issues that have come up. And I've sat with this for maybe a month now and really been thinking deeply into some other things that I would like to add to the conversation, mostly about human development and how we know when a guru is not highly developed. So that is a core problem that many New Age seekers are facing. How do we know who is a good teacher and who isn't? And should we follow them and shouldn't we? And is this a cult or isn't it? So many important questions to consider. So just to say, you can find my previous response. It had lots of views and lots of comments. And so I wanted to expand on some of the comments and explain a little bit more deeply about how we know if somebody has a Peter Pan complex, or if somebody is truly enlightened or just saying a bunch of really impressive words. Is somebody truly getting the bigger picture? Or are they speaking from a very blocked chakra system? Let's put a chakra system. To explain a little bit, I am a teacher, a psychoeducator, and a therapist. So I look at this more from the human development perspective. And human development itself falls under many disciplines. Spirituality talks about how we mature spiritually. Education speaks about how do we learn to develop. And psychology and therapy talk about how we integrate into our psychology more and more in order to develop. So I've done deep practice in all three domains that understand how we mature. So that's why I'm speaking about this. It's because it's been my lifelong work. And as a therapist, I can usually figure out where somebody is in their development, where the blockages are, usually a trauma, or if it's unfixable, what we would call personality disorder, which is not really a fair word because it's usually a little defense mechanism that is developed in childhood that people can never work through, and they repeat the patterns forever. So, yeah, human development has been my passion. I am semi-retired now. I'm a grandmother. I have children and grandchildren, and I've had lots of students and lots of clients. And so I'm speaking from some experience. I've also been the director of a communal residential yoga ashram. So I'm deeply steeped in tantric teachings and what I would call classical tantra, not to be confused with neo-tantra, which is what most of these New Age gurus are doing, is they're mixing up all these ancient teachings. They don't really have an in-depth experience in any one particular lineage. They do know that sexuality is important and that it sells programs. So there's been a lot of commodification about people's sexuality, trying to develop curricula around that. And there's been a lot of abuse, particularly of women. And that is why I'm speaking out about this. Because Neo-Tantra is an American commodification of some very ancient Indian philosophies that need to be understood and not just glibly taught by people who have no depth to their lineage or their understanding. They just know that sex is sexy in itself. So they exploit sexuality. They don't understand it, but they want to teach about it. They make money out of it. And those that get sacrificed are generally the women. So I'm going to just expand a little bit on my first video that I made. You can find it online. There was some confusion. Look for my channel, Dr. Sally Adams Jones, or Sally Adams Jones. For some reason, I've got two channels. That was a mistake. I do this for fun. I give it away. So I'm not particularly professional with my editing and my sound. And I like to share what I've learned over a lifetime. And I've gone into these human development models in 3 different domains in great depth. And I'm not trying to sell anybody anything either. So hopefully there's a little bit of trust established around what I'm about to say. So there is a difference between classical Tantra, which is about learning to manage one's energy, to really work with the libidinal flow that in its earliest form is sexual and survival and instinctive, and to manage that into higher and higher value sets and express it with more and more capacity by containing it through the willpower chakra. I'm talking about the Indian model now of human development, the chakra system. So the bottom one is the root, the grounding. You could say it's at the anal area. So it's about survival. That energy is drawn up through various practices. This is not New Age. This is ancient wisdom, 3,000 years old. So don't confuse this with New Age wisdom. Drawing that energy up through certain practices into the sacral chakra, which is the sacral area, which is the sexual energy, also the fertility area of the body, and it's deeply creative energy as well. If we keep it stuck at that chakra, it's just spent as sexuality. We get addicted to porn. We get addicted to multiple relationships. We don't contain that and draw it up into more profound usage, the creative areas, the willpower, having a strong, healthy container and ego. And we draw that energy up more and more into the solar plexus, the willpower, the ability to develop a strong container, our power, our will, and our self-esteem and confidence. If we can't bring the energy up to that area, we're not developing that. It gets stuck in the sacral sexual area. We bring that energy higher into the heart chakra, where there's love and empathy, and we start to connect with community and really reaching out, bringing our creativity out into our world. So if we can't bring the energy up from the sacral area and the survival area, we're not going to develop our creativity and our ability to connect and have empathy in the heart. Then we have throat chakra. We bring that energy up and we communicate. We have impact in our society. We start to voice our value sets. We begin to articulate and really reach out with narratives and messages, memes. We bring that energy even further up to the third eye. That is where we have our deep intuition, our wisdom, insights, our ability to see beyond the material, develop some spiritual awareness, begin to really fall into meditative and flow states, and begin to connect with higher dimensions. And then, of course, there's the crown chakra, where we connect with the divine. And some would call that enlightenment. I don't really like that word. And there's a whole, we can do a whole video. I will do a whole video on enlightenment. But it's about realizing our oneness with the whole system, that we aren't separate. There's a mystical union available to us when the energy has risen to the crown chakra. So you can imagine the whole human body as a libidinal flow. That's classical tantra. And working with that energy, focusing it, concentrating it, bringing the scattered mind into alignment is the whole practice. And it will take you years to be able to master that. Years and years of practice. Neo-Tantra is about exploring the second chakra, the sexuality. And so many New Age gurus think that's the end all and be all. And as long as you're experiencing pleasure, you're enlightened. Actually, that's a huge fallacy. We call it the pre-trance fallacy. That's pain and pleasure is available to even earthworms. Pain and pleasure is the most basic biofeedback the body can have. It takes us away from danger towards things that are good for us with pleasure. So you'll notice that anything that's good for the human body gives you pleasure. Food, sleep, relationships, sex is pleasurable so that we do it some more. And actually flow states and enlightenment is the most pleasurable, and that's why we keep coming back. So when your gurus, long story short, conflate neo-tantra and make it just about sex, they have no understanding of Indian philosophy, which is absolutely amazing and rich and deep and so much more than genital pleasures, even though they used that metaphorically. The lingam and the yoni, the masculine and the feminine, are intensely important in Indian philosophy. American neo-tantra thinks that's the end all and be all. Literally stuck in the second chakra. That's in that model of human development. They look at that alignment as moving energy up the spine, as if you're a hollow flute. And the highest flow of that libidinal energy is service to the world, not genital pleasure. So if you can't manage that with some level of what we would call stoicism, I wouldn't go so far as to say asceticism. Some Indian practices would ask you to practice celibacy and asceticism. I'm not advocating for that level of extremity. Celibacy meaning you stop the sexual expression and leakage altogether in order to draw that up. You can have a fluid chakra system be operating at all the levels. That is not repression, which is what advocates for polyamory will say it is. If you're managing your sexual energy, they will falsely call that repression. It's not. It's serious mastery, unless you have a blockage. And a blockage can look like leakage, expenditure, inability to say no and have a boundary. That can be actually the lack of repression at that point, or management is the trauma or the immaturity. So they can reframe that. But then I am coming from a classical Tantra lineage where they go into this in great depth. to the point where you can manage your nervous system. You can manage the flow states just by alternating your breathing. So many rich practices. This is not new age. This is ancient wisdom, 3,000 years old. So that's one of the developmental models that I would look at a teacher's curriculum and say, where are they placing their teachings? Which chakra? If they're stuck at the second chakra, they are exhibiting their own blockage. If they are teaching you how to manage that libidinal flow and raise it up, the Kundalini energy, as it's called in India, to higher and higher forms of expression, but not excluding sexual expression or survival or willpower and ego. It includes and integrates, does not repress, but doesn't let wastage and leakage occur. It's managed and contained. The focus, the attention, where is the center of gravity in your life? Where are you spending all your energy? I had some great questions from people who are interested in what did I mean by containment? This is what I mean. Where is the focus? Where are you spending all your time, money, and energy? So you can start diagnosing from which chakra you are expressing your sacred energy. And I'm not saying in order to be one, you have to block your sacral energy. That's not at all. People will say that's repression. I'm saying that there has to be a fluid flow and a consistent level of power in every chakra, not just a leakage, which leaves the chakras above it weak. So that's why you need some stoicism, some masculine energy in any human body. The flow is the feminine and the masculine is the containment. Kundalini is female power and we all have it. And so when I said in my previous video, the toxic feminine in any body, including the masculine, that leakage is the feminine Kundalini that is blocked in certain areas and becomes toxic. So, and then, people will manipulate you into responding from your own chakra at that level. Because fields of resonance can be set up, obviously, between teachers with a certain curriculum, attracting students with the same problems. And then that just amplifies, and there's self-justification of, I have a blocked second chakra, so I'm going to teach about that, and you guys can all start leaking out your second chakra as well. Which is, there's a woman, Nicole Dodone, I think her name is, or something, One Taste. People have made money out of this neo-tantra, and a lot of people have been abused. Conflating genital pleasure with enlightenment. It's one of the biggest, what we call pre-trance fallacies that there is. People make a lot of money out of it because everybody loves to be sexual. The biofeedback of the body is built to do that so that you have babies, so that you can relate and raise that energy and express it healthily. But it doesn't stop there. Higher development, and I am a human developmentalist, higher development requires that libidinal energy be used there and elsewhere. And eventually, when the hormones after midlife subside, andropause, the testosterone drops, menopause, the estrogen drops, we become much more balanced. And we're not so focused at the second chakra or the genitals, and we can commit that energy to higher and higher practice. That is developmental over a lifetime. So I wanted to just say that be careful of teachers who are trapped, not even in egocentric teachings, they're trapped in one earlier, phallocentric teachings. Phallocentrism is even before a strong ego container is built. So in that human developmental model, we have phallocentrism is the earliest stage. Babies are phallocentric until around 2 or 3. Then they start becoming egocentric. Then as humans develop, we become family-centric. We get a little bit more inclusive of where our center of gravity is, what we care about. So we're no longer only phallocentric or egocentric, we're family-centric. Then as we develop more, we can include more into community-centric as we go to school or university, or then we can become ethnocentric because we've learned our culture. We belong to a tribe of people. We have that language, we have those customs. We're including more as we develop. From there, we become national-centric. And we belong to a country, and we have laws, and we have a community of security and education and culture. And as we develop even further, we become world-centric. That's a very high-level form of development and way beyond most North American narcissism right now. You'd have to become interested in global systems and economic policies and foreign policies and how we're treating our neighbors and who actually lives north of the 49th parallel or south of the border, or do we care about them? Are immigrants actually different from us? So the questions become richer and bigger, and the perspective widens as we develop. Are your teachers including that much? And of course, we're then thinking about the planet as a whole. That if an atomic bomb goes off, we're all going to be implicated. That a nuclear winter will impact us all. That an asteroid coming is going to impact us all. That climate crisis will impact us all. We're thinking Gaian, the whole ecosystem. That the tides can no longer be contained within a country, that there are actually no such things as borders when there's pandemics. We're thinking as a whole. That's a very, very high level of development. And the final one is cosmocentric. When we understand our place in the universe, we're understanding physics and galactic movements and oneness, basically enlightenment at that stage. So the smallest, tightest form of human development is phallocentric. We're thinking about our genitalia, our pleasure, thinking that is the end all and be all. Then we're containing that with a egocentrism, which is healthy. I'm not anti-ego, I'm pro-ego, healthy ego. The ego must expand. A shrunken little tight horrible ego is what we would call narcissism. So expanding the phallocentrism to egocentrism, to family centricism, to community centricism, to national centricism and ethnocentrism, to world centricism, to cosmocentrism. When we are cosmocentric, we are enlightened. So if your teacher is telling you that genital pleasure is the highest form of enlightenment, you have been horribly scammed. It's really important when seeking a teacher that you can identify their level of development. And there's tons of beautiful human development models that you can go and research. And I'll give more videos on this, but you can look for, obviously I'm in the classical Tantra model, which is the chakra system. That is almost identical to the Western models. Simple ones like Abraham Maslow's model of human needs. You can look that up. You can place yourself in that structure, see where you are in terms of where your energy and center of gravity is. Is it around your survival? Is it around your sense of security? Is it around your sense of belonging? Is it around sex and marriage, finding a partner? Is all your energy consumed around your self-development and your self-esteem, your self-actualization? Or is it about self-transcendence, which is service to the whole, the community? So you can look at the chakra system, you can look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can diagnose where you are and your teacher, be a good match. He or she must be more than you to be leading you, not just very articulate and charismatic and seductive. That's not enough. Don't ever abdicate critical thought when finding a teacher. They need to be able to know a wider perspective than you and to guide you into that, and you will outgrow them. Then you find the next teacher who has a wider inclusion in their perspective. And maybe you'll find somebody who's enlightened or cosmocentric. To end, perhaps, now that I've had my little rant about what I would call spiritual gigolos, people who are making money out of knowing that everybody loves pleasure, building curriculums about that, selling sex. When sex is really important, but only the beginning. And that is why enlightenment is, you'll see statues of Buddha smiling like he's having a big O, because that's the kind of state you can learn to cultivate through practices. It's like you're living in a full body big O. And genital is minimal at that point. So if your teacher can't take you to the full-bodied, permanent stage of bliss, they're a charlatan. They're liberating your second chakra, not your third eye or your crown chakra. So I was going to say, perhaps the best human model of development, you can Google and I'll make videos on this, but enough for today, would be the spiral dynamics. You can look up that model. It takes you through exactly the same stages of development that Indian philosophers knew 3,000 years ago. Spiral dynamics was articulated in the 1980s. 3,000 years ago, classical tantric teachers were teaching this already. They just called it slightly different things. It's the same. The chakra model is the same as Maslow's model, is the same as spiral dynamics, but spiral dynamics brings more words to it and the deep scientific research across cultures. They've proven that we go through 8 stages of development. And it's amazing because we all go through this and we get blocked along the way. And you should find out where you are on this map of human development. More importantly, where is your teacher? Yeah. So when we talk about a Peter Pan complex, which is a man who never grows up because they have certain developmental delays, we call it delays. They never get beyond the sexual stage. That is not an ideal teacher. And I'm not saying that the people included in this issue were, that there's anything wrong with them. All I'm saying is we need to look for the most mature human on the planet if we are going to abdicate some level of critical thought and give our souls to them to learn from them. We need to have discrimination. We need to know who we're opening up to and giving ourselves and our attention and energy and money to in order to learn the highest value set. So that takes some critical thought, some discrimination. And one of the responses that I noticed with people's videos was, oh, but so-and-so can't be narcissist or have a developmental delay because they're just so nice. Well, there are lots of kinds of narcissism, which is a developmental delay in one of those chakras, usually around the second or third, usually the third chakra. Because they haven't really yet developed the complete empathy or ability to bring in another perspective. That is what narcissism is. They can be the sweetest, kindest, loving people that you've ever met. That is not what makes them a narcissist. Although they are malignant narcissists, that's a different kind. There are sadists, there are sociopaths and psychopaths, Machiavellian, dark triad narcissists. That's a particular kind. There are also covert narcissists. So you don't realize they are because they're kind and sweet, they're communal. But they really only, where is their attention and their ability to include, they can only include their own perspective. They can learn how to mask that. They can learn how to cognitively pretend they're including your perspective because they're not stupid. They're really bright. They have all the words. They're charismatic, seductive, articulate. They can learn through the critique they're getting to do the nonviolent communication. They can pretend, they can say the thing. They can be sweet and learn how to appear to be kind, but really they only have their perspective. They cannot physically, it's like having a broken leg. You can't expect them to run when they have a broken leg. You cannot expect them to have the other's perspective, to respect that other being, to have the consent, to understand the subjectivity of the other sentient beings of equal value in their presence. It's always hierarchical. They're always better than. They're always top down. They're always controlling, making you subject to them. So I will do more videos on narcissism. That was one of the things that people gave me feedback on. What is containment of energy? People were mixing up neo-tantra with classical tantra. People were saying, but these people are so nice and charismatic and have big following. That's not how you diagnose a narcissist. They can do all the masking and all the words. So yeah, I would just love to leave everybody with, I'm going to put out a lot more videos, especially for women, because we're still dominated by the one perspective. If a man and only men are controlling the narrative and building the curriculum, it will be from their limited perspective. And we have multiple genders and we are all very different. And I will continue to speak about why and how. And until we have women's voices, women's perspectives, co-creation of curricula that serve all of us, that respect the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine and the yes and the no, and are teaching the right to say both, to be in control of both our yes and our no, we are being exploited as women. So I'll continue to make lots of videos. You can find me elsewhere. I have the two channels, Dr. Sally Adams-Jones and just Sally Adams-Jones. That was a mistake. I'll try to fix that. But I also have a podcast, 26 episodes. You can find me. That is all about human development. I give it away for free. You can find that podcast on any platform. It's called radicalemergence.org. Conversations on the Edge of Transformation. And I go into a lot more depth about human development, and that's free. I'm semi-retired. I'm not selling you anything. I'm just giving away decades of deep study in how we grow towards our highest potential, which some people call enlightenment. I don't like that word, but it's a metaphor that we all generally buy into. It's kind of become meaningless anyway, but I will give videos on what that actually means and how we can establish a kind of common language around why would we be bothering to grow at all. The sincere seeker needs to have a sincere teacher and not be abused and be able to trust that they're being guided by somebody who's actually wiser than them, especially if they're going to be paying money. I have daughters-in-law and I have granddaughters, and my next 20 years are dedicated to healthy narratives for men and women that serve us equally. So thank you so much for spending time with me. Find my podcast, radicalemergence.org. Find my other YouTube channel. There's a book coming out soon. I have other books published out there on creativity. I look at how we transform specifically through spiritual practice, through therapeutic practice and creative practice. That's the tripod for me, is how we become agentic, how we find our voice, how we move that energy up from the pelvis through the chest into our highest being and connection until we become instruments for the divine, mystical union. So feel free to give me comments as you see fit. At some point, if there's too many, I do cut them off because I need to move on to the next video and track those comments, and I only have so much time in the week. But generally, if you're critiquing my content and not my scarf or my personality, I appreciate that. That's straw manning. Please feel free to speak about the content. Let's build a community with dialogue, respectful dialogue. And if you're trolling me, I will remove your comments. But if you have critical, constructive, and kind, respectful thoughts, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. So take care and thanks for your time. Find me on my website, sallyadnamsjones.com. Bye-bye.